Over to you.
Oh, thank you, Pam. That was lovely. Yes, I do remember that evening well. And for me, every day at the living room was a humbling experience, as you said, and it's the biggest part of my life, that really um, has a major effect, on me as a person as well. So um, anyway, I'll start off by saying, well, to start with, please bear with me because, as I said earlier, some of you may not have heard me, but I haven't done any public speaking for the last 4 years, really. And I kind of realised that as I was writing notes last night, thinking, oh, I've not done this for so long. And it was a bit of a daunting thought, really. So um, I'm going to just talk off the top of my head. Uh, some of what I'm about to say, and I have made a lot of notes as well that I will read from because I didn't want to miss any facts and figures, and also, it's so easy afterwards to think, oh, I didn't say that and I didn't say that. So I really want to try and include, as much as possible, but I'm absolutely sure that Adrian will fill in the gaps because there will be gaps. That's for sure. So anyway, I won't waffle on anymore, but so I'll just start by saying that, my name is Janis and I'm also a recovering alcoholic. And on the 22nd of November, I will be 34 years sober. And it's been an amazing 34 years. And for the last 30 years of that, I've dedicated my work working in the field of addiction because, if I could recover from where the depths I came from, many other people can also do that. I have actually sketched the cycle of addiction. I thought I'd kind of start off by describing what addiction is really all about. And if you can kind of think of, if you've got notepads, you can jot it down. But if you think of a circle as a piece of cake and then cut out 5 areas, 5 sections, and the first section at the top is actually the entry point of addiction, which is pain. And pain can start at any time in our life. It can be in childhood, adolescence, marriage, even later on in older life. The pain that, for me, it was my inability to deal with my reality at that time. And that pain is the entry point of addiction. From the pain, you go into the next section, which is you find your drug of choice. And for me at the time, it was alcohol. Also, I was very addicted to Valium as well. So, so that's the next section, drug of choice, whatever that may be. And it could be a behavior as well, addictive behavior. And it can be absolutely anything, the drug of choice. And then you go into the next section, which is when you become oblivion to what's really going on. It's where you're at that high point, euphoria. It's when you're doing things as well that you don't even know you're doing. When you're kind of out of it, you can be in blackout, and you're doing things, but you're doing a lot of things you wouldn't normally do when you're not in that place. And so from the oblivion goes into the next section, which is negative consequences. So from the oblivion, when you wake up the next day or come to or whatever, it's what you did the day before, the night before. Some people go into blackout for a few days. So it's the negative consequences that you find yourself in. And I'll give you an example of that. Somebody many years ago, he used to get arrested on a regular basis and put in the police cell overnight for drunken disorderly, and the next day they'd let him out and charge him, and that he would carry on, and that happened on several occasions. And one day he's knocking on the door saying, let me out. And they said, you're not going anywhere. And he said, well, what do you mean? He said, they said you killed someone last night. And he had absolutely no recollection whatsoever of what had happened. And so that's the kind of thing that can go on when you're in that place of oblivion. And, you find out, I mean, there was another example where 2 police officers were married, and they woke up in the morning, and the woman had black eyes, all her nose smashed and everything. And her husband turned around and said, well, what happened to you last night? Thinking that something had happened while she was on duty. And she said, you did it. And he had no recollection, of doing that to his own wife. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on at that point. So from the negative consequences, you go into the guilt and shame, because when you do realise what you've done, and you think about it, and it's like, how could I have done that, and, what possessed me, and, all sorts of things. And I'd lay in the morning thinking, what did I do last night? Where did I go? Who was I with? And, I'd be trying to work out, what I'd done the night before. And so from the guilt and shame that you get, that guilt and shame creates more pain. And then you're back in the pain. So they are the 5 sections, basically, of addiction. So it starts off with the pain, drug of choice, oblivion, negative consequences, guilt and shame, and more pain. And, that's, people say you like pull yourself together and all that. As an addict, you can't pull yourself together. You need help. It isn't something, I would never, ever have got well on my own. I would have been gone long ago. But in my days, 34 years ago, there wasn't the treatment centres that there are today. And I actually went to a 12-step fellowship, and that was how I got my recovery. And I still go to the same 12-step fellowship today, because I go for 2 reasons. I go to maintain my recovery and to carry a message to other people. If there wasn't somebody there 34 years telling me they're 34 years sober, I wouldn't believe it was possible. So it's really important for older members to still carry on going to fellowship. And that's been, a huge part of my life. So that's a little bit about addiction. And for me, I actually was in a really, really abusive marriage, and I could not cope with what was going on in my marriage, and it was my inability to deal with my reality. And I also believe I was born without the instruction manual for life, and I didn't know how to do it. And so I'd got 2 young children as well, and then I actually was going to my doctors suffering with depression, and I was on antidepressants. He then put me on Valium, and then I found alcohol as well. So I had a good combination, really. And that's how it went on for a few years. I only drank alcoholically for 3 years at that point. And I say only, it was bad enough. I was what we call a functioning alcoholic. I was still doing things, keeping my children clean, bathing them, reading them stories and putting them to bed. And but I was a mess. I was an emotional mess. And my husband did all sorts of things. Like eventually I wasn't allowed to eat his food. And he used to cut the fuse wire for the immersion heater, so I had no hot water. There was all sorts of things. I started divorce proceedings while I was there as well. And he actually physically stopped me going out the door one day to see my solicitor. And there was a fight at the front door. He wouldn't let me out the door. I ran upstairs into the bathroom, locked myself in there, and got a pen and paper out of my bag and wrote a note, help, and the telephone number of my solicitor. And I threw it out the window in the bathroom to the 2 old ladies that were next door in the garden. And they picked it up and phoned my solicitor, and my solicitor came round, and that's how I got out of the house that day. So there was all sorts. I won't bore you on all what went on, but it was pretty horrendous. And in fact, my husband was turned out to be quite a crook. He was he actually was eventually, well, years after I left him and got divorced, but he was smuggling drugs from one continent to another, and he actually was murdered in doing that. And again, working the 12-step program, I actually, one of the parts of our program is to forgive others. And I did manage to forgive my ex-husband, and I did actually make my peace with him at one point. And 18 months after that was when he was murdered. And I actually went to his funeral, and I went for the right reasons, because I would have happily jumped on his grave once upon a time. But I went because I had forgiven him, and I went for my children as well. I don't know why I've rambled on about that bit, but it's coming into my head. And that's, you know, that's the absolute amazing part of getting well and being able to do things like that, you know. And I have to live my life today in a straight way and an honest way, and I have to live at peace. I have to have peace in my mind, and that was all part of my getting my peace many years ago now. Anyway, I'll flit on. I'll get past that because I don't want to ramble on too long. So I came into recovery, and I decided 30 years ago, I decided to start volunteering at a drug agency. And I started volunteering at a drug agency, and then I went to college studying counselling. After that, I started working in a residential treatment centre as a case manager. From there, I assisted in setting up another residential centre and daycare service, and I was the manager there for 4 years. It was while I was at that centre that I had the vision to set up my own charity, a daycare treatment programme. While I was working there, 3 things became apparent to me. One, I felt when I looked at the clients in the house, I really felt that if there'd have been a structured daycare program available to them that they could attend 5 days a week, I believe many of them could have got well without going into residential. I'm not knocking residential. It does really have its place for certain people, but many of them could have got recovery without being in residential. The second thing was that many of them would not stay the required 6 months and would leave and relapse and then come back through the revolving door again. And some of them would even die. And that was, you know, really sad. So I really could see that there was a need for a local daycare service. The third thing that became apparent to me there was one of my greatest concerns was for the children of addicts. When a parent came in for 6 months stay, some children went to stay with family members and some would be put into care. And it was extremely difficult to arrange visits through social services. And then perhaps only once a month that I could arrange a visit. There were many occasions when I had all the arrangements for the visit only to receive a call from social services telling me they had to cancel for various reasons. I would have to pass this information on to the parent and start making further arrangements all over again. But this left both the parents and me totally devastated. The parent would be so upset, and I would have to spend a lot of time trying to console them and persuade them into staying in treatment, as many would want to leave. And at this point, they could not take the separation from their children. Emotionally, they were traumatized by the event, and to try to get them to concentrate on their recovery program was very difficult and painful. And some of them would leave and relapse, and the children and parents would suffer even more. So I really saw, you know, that there was a gaping hole in services, and that's really how I had the vision. So clients would often be sent to rehabs as well, miles away from their home. They seemed to think this was a good idea, but also The fact was that there wasn't too many rehabs around anyway, so you had to travel miles, you know. And again, it would be very difficult for the families to visit. And again, the separation would be too much for them and they would leave. So my vision was to set up a structured therapeutic daycare service where clients could receive the help they needed and still live in their own community and recover. The living room has its own creche, which is Ofsted registered, where the children can be professionally looked after whilst the parents receive their treatment. This year, 2020, we had 40 children in the creche from 27 families, some of which were on the at-risk register. During the 16 years I worked at the living room, we had 46 children returned to their families out of care and many, many more off the at-risk register. So, you know, for me, having a creche has been a major part of recovery for many, many parents who would never been able to have to get recovery, to actually go to anywhere, to receive treatment because of childcare, you know, for their children, obviously. So I've also been asked many times why I named it the living room. Well, I wanted to get away from the stigma of addiction, where there were a few agencies in those days, you know, going back 20 years when I set the living room up. And many of them had the word alcohol or drug in the title of their centre. And I really felt I wanted to get away from that because I've really tried to get away from the stigma of addiction. And so I wanted something that didn't have drugs or alcohol in it, and where people could come and feel safe and comfortable, you know, a comfortable place to come to. So the living room came about. The name just happened, really. And also, it's a place where you go to learn to live, you know, because I didn't know how to live when I was in my addiction. I had to be taught, told, shown, you know. So that's how I got the name. And I'll talk about now what the work of the living room does. Our work consists of group therapy, AM and PM. Also, one-to-one counselling is available where needed. We have a success rate of 65%, and I believe this is because all of the staff who work in the groups are highly qualified counsellors and all are in long-term recovery themselves from various addictions. They have all qualified since being in recovery, and this helps the clients and immediately gives them identification and hope that they can get well and become useful and respected members of the community. And I found when I used to interview clients, the minute I said my name and I was an alcoholic and I'd been in recovery however many years at that time, I would feel their whole body would just relax. And it was just a sigh of like, someone knows what I'm talking about, you know, and immediately, you know, the trust was formed and people would just open up because they knew you knew where they were coming from. I hadn't read it out of a textbook. You know, I knew, you know, from my own experience. And that happens with all the counsellors, that because every client that comes into the living room is interviewed. And so the counsellors interview them. So they start from day one. The minute they walk in the door, that connection starts. And the connection is what it's really all about from that first minute they walk in. And many of them said, you know, from walking in through that door, their life just changed, you know. So anyway, I can get quite emotional when I think about that. And also three of our ex-clients have also gone on to qualify as counsellors and now work at the living room, which is a great feat. It's tremendous to know and see that happening and see them blossom and see them just come into their own, you know, with counselling the clients. It's just amazing. As a Christian myself, I wanted churches in Stevenage to be involved. Oh, I've done something. What have I done? Sorry.
Keep talking. You look fine to us. It's just your screen.
Oh, that's right. All my screen went funny. I must have touched something.
Don't worry.
Okay, I'm back on. So I took my vision to my own vicar, and then we took it to churches together in Stevenage, who at the time were discussing what they could do for the millennium that would have a lasting effect. They didn't want, you know, a big bang of fireworks or something. They wanted something that would last and be of value to the community. They knew that there was a very large addiction problem in Stevenage, but didn't know what to do about it. So when I presented my vision to them, they wholeheartedly supported me, and we organised a gift day, which raised a lot of money all over Stevenage for the charity. I also applied to St Albans Diocese for a grant, which was successful for 3 years, but they also continued to support the living room over all the years. We also at the time received a grant from the police as well, and there was lots of other fundraising events, and many people signed up for donating on a monthly basis, and it just began. It just started, and I opened the charity on the 2nd of May 2000 in one room in a community centre, and I had a broom cupboard as an office. I laugh about the broom cupboard because it literally was that, and I painted it out. There wasn't a window in it, nothing, and there was just enough room for a desk and a photocopying machine and other bits and pieces. But it was I started off with nothing. It was so basic. It just amazes me what happened. And we stayed there for a year, and then I had to move out of that community centre because it was being refurbished. And then we moved into another community centre for another year. And during that time, I searched and searched for premises. And I remember saying to somebody else who worked at another drug agency at the time that I was looking for new premises. And this man said to me, and I always remember, oh, you'll never find anything like that in Stevenage. And I thought, don't ever tell me I won't do it, because I'll show you I will. You know, that's rag to a bull for me. You know, don't tell me no, because it'll be a yes. And I found this 13-room building, beautiful building that the living room still operates from. And it had been derelict for 3 or 4 years, and no one would make up their minds about whether I you know, went to the council to see if I could rent it, and nobody would make their minds up because it was the I can't think of the actual word now, but anyway, so eventually my friend and we actually prayed around the building and we got it. It was, as I say, it was empty and derelict. Every window in the place was smashed. And fortunately, the Rotary Club, that's another organisation that's helped us a lot, and the Inner Wheel. And they actually came and did all the refurbishing for it. And that was incredible as well. It needed like one door put in and one wall moved slightly and the toilets all redone. Apart from that, it was like almost built for the purpose, you know, of what we needed. Anyway, we're all still there. That's where Adrian operates from. And after another couple of years, I managed to I took on another room, a shop actually, and did a change of use, and that became another treatment centre room. And yeah, I acquired that for specialist groups. On the 22nd of July 2006, we opened our first charity shop. This not only raises money for the living room, it also enables our clients to volunteer when they are nearing the end or already completed their treatment. They learn to become part of a team and to grow in confidence, and many of them have gone on to get full-time employment as a result of that. And I've been able to give many references to assist those seeking employment. Within a few years, I opened our second charity shop, which specialises in children's clothes, toys, equipment, etc. And again, that was quite a niche really, because I hadn't seen that anywhere else. And I just had a thing about having a children's charity shop. And that's been, you know, again, another great asset to the living room. On the 23rd of February 2013, we opened our second branch of the living room in St Albans, which also continues to have a 65% success rate. And in the last year, the living room opened another centre in Watford. That's happened since I left the living room, well, since I retired from the living room. And last week, our virtual centre was opened. That again, Adrian can tell you lots about that, because I had nothing to do with that at all. That's Adrian's baby, and you know, it's just been incredible. This is a new hub where more funds have been received and more staff employed. So the living room at this time, you know, of you know, so many people being made redundant, the living room is actually employing more staff. So that's incredible, and that's all down to Adrian. So my hat's off to her. So the living room continues to grow. Since I retired in 2016, you didn't know this, Adrian, but I've written about you here. Adrian took over as the new CEO and has done an absolutely amazing, incredible job. She now runs the living room and has taken it to another level, embracing technology, which is completely off my radar. And I'm so pleased with the new growth, which has taken the living room forward in a new dimension, where clients still receive such a high level of care and professionalism and treatment. It really warms my heart to see that. You know, at this time with the pandemic going, you know, what's going on at the moment, you know, to increase something, you know, is quite an incredible feat. And part of that, doing the online meetings as well, it enables, I probably said it already here somewhere, but it enables people who can't receive treatment because maybe they're disabled, or they haven't got the transport or the money to use transport to get to the living room. So, you know, it's an amazing step forward, I believe, in helping even more people receive treatment and get recovery. So I'll go on now. It's not only the addicts who receive, just realised the time. It's not only the addicts who receive help, it's also the families and carers that also receive treatment, as they also suffer and are affected by the illness of their family member and don't know what to do, and they feel helpless, and again can create trauma for the carer and family member. The illness of addiction, as you may know, is mental, physical and spiritual, and mental health is very much in the news, and addiction comes under the umbrella of mental health. In the last 4 years, 35% of our clients were diagnosed with mental health problems. However, since COVID-19, it is now 50%. So, you know, that's quite a leap, really. We have more families and carers with mental health problems seeking help. And in the last year, 500 addicts have gone through treatment, and 100 families and carers have also received treatment and support. The average time for a client receiving treatment is 10 months, and for the family members and carers, it's 4 months. But again, this can go on longer depending on the individual client or family member, because we cater for the actual needs of the clients. And part of treatment, catering for those needs, is also if they had difficulties with housing. We've had many homeless people come to us where we've got housing for them. If they've got problems with money issues, again, we can help. We signpost people to whatever it is that their needs are at that time, and continue to do so. So it's not just the treatment of addiction, but it's actually looking at the whole person and looking at all their needs, and helping them and signposting them to the appropriate agencies. So regarding mental health issues, what's become more apparent is the amount of people coming forward with abuse issues from their past and childhood. This, I believe, has come about as more people are finding the courage to come forward and seek appropriate help. Again, through modern technology, people can be traced. Now you can use Google and trace anyone today. And any old news is not lost news today. You can, again, pick up stuff from years ago. More is being brought about into the light. More is being brought out into the light instead of being kept in the darkness of secrecy. And as I've always said, it's not only the abuse that keeps them sick, it's keeping the secret that keeps them sick. So it's a really important part, you know, of helping our clients to actually unblock that, you know, and to get it out. And I've gone on to say, in our group therapy sessions, when a client is brave enough to share their past abuse, this gives other clients permission and safety to share theirs. This is also addressed in our one-to-one counselling as well. Abuse is very often been the trigger for the addiction and mental health problems. So their healing begins at the living room. I'm just going to go on to say now that, again, one of the questions may be asked is, how do we get our funding? Well, Herts County Council, we receive money from, but every year they kind of want more for less money. But and again, Adrian does an amazing job by filling in the gaps, you know, and doing what she does with her team. BBC Children in Need fund our creche, and they've done that for many, many, many years. And many foundations, trust foundations, have supported us. As I mentioned earlier, Rotary Club and Inner Wheel. There's individual donations. There's lots of fundraising events that Adrian and her team put on, and we've done this all over the years from day one. And churches support us. Our shops certainly support us, and many more. You can find a list on our website of our funders as well. And throughout our 20 years, we've received over 20 awards. And yeah, including my MBE, which was 10 years ago. But since I left, Adrian can tell you about the awards and the work that's gone into those awards, you know, because the living room has just continued and continued to do this. So to sum up my whole experience of the living room, nothing gives me more pleasure than seeing our clients still in recovery many years after they've left treatment, and see their families back together where the healing has taken place and they're being reunited. Because of I'm in AA, as I've mentioned, I still see many of our clients. I was sitting in the meeting only last week, because we've had some face-to-face meetings, and there was a client sitting there who was 19 years in recovery that I've known all through the years. You know, I see them continually. I can be in the town and they walk up and talk to me, and, you know, I never stop bumping into them, and that just warms my heart, you know. So to see that this is lasting, it wasn't a drop in the ocean, you know, this has lasted and it continues to last, you know, it continues to go on. And I'll just finish on this saying that life is to be enjoyed, not endured, you know, because my life, I was just enduring life at that time. But, you know, it's not like that today. And I'm just blessed, absolutely blessed and delighted that Adrian, you know, we meet up once a month now and have a good old chat and a good laugh, and Adrian fills me in with what's going on and that, and it's just amazing. And again, Adrian's just blessed the living room so much. So I'll leave it there. Thank you. And any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Thank you. Or Adrian. That's it. Anyone there?
Oh, well, I'm here. Are we going to just give some time to Adrian before I thank Janis? Can we do that? Have we time?
Yes, we can. We've got 5 minutes. So
Thank you.
we ask any questions?
Adrian, do you want to unmute yourself?
I'm unmuted, yeah. Yeah, Janis is an inspiration, and she left behind a legacy for me to take on. And I'll say that the reason why I got involved and wanted to work and take over as CEO from an absolute legend is because my sister obtained her recovery at the living room. And say that my sister was in a dark place before she went, and who she is now, you know, in long-term recovery, 9 years. You know, I know I'm very thankful to the living room for that, but also it is just every day an inspiring place to be. And I would say that every person that walks through the door has taken a very brave step. And when they walk through the door, they don't realise how much hard work they're going to have to put in. But, you know, 65% doesn't sound like 100%. But actually, even the people who don't leave us with a successful outcome, which is a government guideline successful outcome, I'd say that we inspire and change the lives of many, many more people than that 65%. And, you know, everything that Janis set up, apart from the fact that we've turned to technology, is the same. The way we do things is the same. And the ethos and our values is the same. Fortunately, during lockdown, because I am a bit tech savvy, luckily, and I have a team around me, and you know, timing was right, I was able to harness that, and we didn't actually have a gap in service. So we went straight online, we supported everybody, and fortunately we've now started to open up our centres. So yeah, technology is a wonderful thing because it means that people haven't been lost. And I think that there could have been a great danger. So yeah, I think it's an amazing place to be. There are people that come to us very, very broken, and they find themselves again by the time they leave, which is fantastic.
Thanks. Can I just add one thing that I wrote down on a separate piece of paper, because I really wanted to say that the staff at the living room are incredible, and we have many volunteers as well. And there's one volunteer been there since I started 20 years ago, and she's volunteered every week of her life, you know, for 20 years. And the staff that are there have been there for years. Every time I got enough money to take on another member of staff, that member of staff has remained, you know, and, you know, they've been there for many, many years, some of many of our councillors. And it's just, you know, as we've gone on, we've taken on more staff. But that in itself says a lot for the living room, because we've never had a turnover of staff ever. And, you know, they dedicate their lives to it. And it's such a blessing for anyone to work there, you know, because they learn as well. And I learn, you know, I learn every day there. So, yeah, I just wanted to say that for Adrian to pass on as well, really, that incredible staff. Thank you.
thank you, Janis. And thank you, Adrian. I was privileged to hear Janis present to our club, and I was inspired then. Having heard her again and heard from Adrian, I am doubly inspired. I think it's an absolute joy to hear what's been achieved, and I really, really want to thank you for coming and talking to the region today, and telling us the story and sharing the success. And well done to both of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've been blessed with two really, really interesting speakers, but it's time to get back to a little bit of business, because it is time for me to hand over the presidency to